Trend with our Kagurabachi catch up. Chapter 36 Geniuses is out, and it's not as long winded as the others, so this one should be fairly quick. This chapter gives us a long awaited explanation on spirit energy. Basically, there are stages to becoming a sorcerer, and the first is that you train your body to retain the spirit energy. Next, you use that spirit energy to unleash sorcery. This basically explains that everybody has the possibility to become a sorcerer through a set amount of training that isn't identified yet, but the sorcery projection that you use from the spiritual energy is actually predetermined. We definitely had a little bit of an understanding of this through the Ice Girl and Char's abilities, but we also found out that once you unleash it is when you get a deeper understanding for the ability and able to unleash its mysteries. Mr. Shiba is actually explaining this to us while explaining this to Hikari within the story. He basically lets him know that once you get that grasp of the sorcery, if you hold on to it, you can deeper understand it and cultivate it better and faster. We already know that Hikari is technically a genius. He has an affinity for great spiritual energy and sorcery. He just wasn't a super genius like the rest of the Sazanami family was, which is why he had regressed so much. Coming back to Shoya and Hikari, the tools that Shoya was using to torture Hikari actually start popping up out of what seems like thin air or a fabricated space. And this is because Hikari now has access to a storehouse. He finally understands his ability, and keep in mind, this storehouse is very small compared to the Sazanami one that has been passed down for generations. It is his own of his own kind. He's finally grasped this level of sorcery. He has two affinities to sorcery pretty much and can use two abilities from the Sazanami family, Iso and the storehouse. We also get a little bit more lore on Iso. You won't be able to use Iso once the storehouse ability is passed down through the next generation, and we basically get a ton of information. The first patriarch of the Sazanami family was able to use both the storehouse and Iso. He is the reason why it was able to be passed down through bloodlines. He is basically a one of one, a maverick, a generational feat has been accomplished through his sorcery. Here we have a lot of sentimental memories between both Shoya and Hikari. Shoya is thinking of what his father is saying of him. It's time for him to step into the role of the new leader of the Sazanami and forget about Hikari. We have Hikari thinking back to how he actually has an affinity to his spiritual energy and he should be able to draw out more of that power. And we get an absolutely cold panel with Hikari manifesting the Sazanami mask on his left eye. Obviously, thinking back to everything his father said about having an affinity to two types of sorcery through the Sazanami family, and that being something that was so special to the first patriarch, Shoya is completely enraged, wondering why basically Hikari is this genius. He's the magical person who's came after generations of, just typical ceremonial pass downs. He's asking things like why him? He should be beat up. He should go ahead and pass away already. And he's basically super frustrated at the fact that Hikari is this special person, which also plays part in, wanting his father's approval and caring for his father's love. Hikari basically is thinking back to the time with his ice girl here, thinking about how all of his torture was nothing compared to what she had to go through and what he had further placed on her. Shoya is looking to finish the job on Hikari, and it's not looking good for him. But in the same time, we go back to Chihiro fighting against Tenri with Mr. Shiba. Excuse me, I misspoke. We are actually still with Hikari. Shoya is wondering why he won't go down. We then get an explanation that he wasn't able to wield the Iso is because he was manifesting the storehouse that he wasn't, aware of. Now that he is aware of the storehouse that he has, he can understand how to basically flip his sorcery and put his spiritual energy into Iso. And he does just that by launching an Iso at Shoya, and it's a powerful shockwave, and it looks to knock Shoya out. And keep in mind, he is bleeding, but I do not think that that is accredited to Hikari. I believe that is from the wound that Chihiro had placed on Shoya prior. Now we move back to the fight with Tenri and Chihiro, and we gotta appreciate this beautiful paneling right here. Chihiro, realizing he has to end this, calls out for Mei once again, and basically a flash happens. They wonder what's going on. Chihiro ends up getting the upper hand on Tenri, but right before he's about to land the final blow, the Datanseki takes care of him already. leaving Chihiro pretty much shocked, and Chihiro finds Hikari has arrived to him after defeating Shoya. They both decide to head to the door for the Rakuzachi auction and end the auction together. The chapter ends there. We're closing in on the catch up of Kagurabachi. Chapter 37 equals out. Let's get into it. The chapter starts right where we left off at, with Chihiro, Mr. Shiba, and Hikari heading to the emergency gate after defeating the Sazanami and Tenri unfortunately losing his life. Mr. Shiba is basically talking about how rare Hikari is. He's never really seen anybody with two types of sorcery. And that just accredits, Hikari to being as much of a genius as he is. Mr. Shiba is so knowledgeable about spirit energy and about sorcery, yet he has never seen something like this in person. It's amazing. We then get the rest of the Toe Sazanami family waking each other up, saying that they have to head to the emergency door. Tenri's life can't be wasted by letting them get there. Also, in the bottom panel, we see that the Cloud Gouger actually has another crack into it. Chihiro mentions that the Cloud Gouger is pretty much all used up. All that's left is for them to get into the storehouse through the emergency gate and retrieve N10. We also get Mr. Shiba asking Hikari a little bit about the storehouse. He's wondering if they can access the same storehouse. Hikari lets him know that it is two completely different spaces that neither can directly interact with without the other. And we find that the emergency door has been broken. Everybody's pretty much shocked. The rest of the Toe end up pulling up and they see that the door's broken too. And Chihiro's wondering, like, they didn't even know that the door was broken and this is what they've been protecting this whole time. We basically find out that Kura Sazanami set up this whole elaborate plan basically to get Chihiro and Mr. Shiba to exhaust all of their valuables and reveal their hand. And you can tell Chihiro's absolutely disgusted by this because Tenri sacrificed his life for this door, while Kura was just using all of the Sazanami, the Toe, his children, as pawns. But that doesn't matter to the Toe because they decide that they won't let Tenri's death go in vain and still finish off what they started. Mr. Shiba had suggested that they retreat for the time being, but Chihiro is wondering what that will do. Kura is also commencing with the auction while Hikari just arrives on the stairs. Kura is basically saying that there's nothing else they can do. He understands that he now has a storehouse, Hikari, but it isn't related at all to his. So there's no way that they can get in now, and basically the game's over. And that's even solidified down here in the bottom panel where they said that they aren't connected at all anymore. Hikari still wants praise from his father, though. That's all the Sazanami children ever wanted, was love from their father. Hikari realizes that he can't really do anything with the items in his storehouse, but he was able to do something from his side, which is send Chihiro into Kyora's storehouse. Kyora is wondering why he still showed up, even though he can't use the Cloud Gouger and the Intens in his possession. Kyora lets him know that he is in his realm, his world, so to speak of, and he attacks Chihiro with the realm. And then we get this viral moment that everybody has been talking about, where Chihiro calls on the Cloud Gouger again, telling it to pull itself together, calling out for Ame one last time, and strikes down in a bolt of lightning on the Kyora storehouse. We then get a little bit of monologuing from Chihiro for what seems like it to be in his thoughts, basically saying to Hikari that they aren't equals. Hikari was able to do something Chihiro wasn't able to do twice. He defeated Shoya despite being family, and while Chihiro's personal feelings led him to waver. In the same breath, it seems as though he's saying thank you to Hikari and also thank yous to the Cloud Gouger for using the last bit of it. He says that he couldn't defeat Kyora back then, and if he didn't, he has no right to wield a enchanted blade now. He calls out for N10. Hikari asks for Chihiro to slay his father. Chihiro obliges, and the chapter ends there. So I figured I would couple chapter 36 and 37 together because story-wise, they flow a little better together than me covering chapter 37 and 38. And I think I will do chapter 38 as a standalone. Chapter 36 was really interesting in its own way. One, because we got the conclusion of Tenri, which I was super excited for. I was wondering how they would do it, and I think that Hokuzono did a phenomenal job summarizing Tenri as a character and him and his place holding in the story. I also love Chihiro's reaction to Tenri. It looks almost as he's shocked but also disgusted. It's really a shame what Kyora's been doing to the Sazanami family and the trauma that's been brought along with it through his ties with Akuri. This has, brought out so much emotion in him, and it's just nice to see that reaction from him. As much as people like to think Chihiro's some cold blooded kind of edgy MC, he's nothing of the sort. His morals aren't really all over the place, but they are very strong, and his emotions kind of waver and maneuver throughout the story. He's like a roller coaster. He kind of goes up, he goes down. Sometimes he's keeping a level headed, and I love the range of emotion that he's been able to display. Whether it be anger, whether it be shock, whether he's thinking back to his father and actually deciding to keep a level head. I love how it's all incorporated into the story, and I love how that brings a different level of depth to Chihiro. Now, touching back to chapter 36, I'm super glad that we got the specific details of how spirit energy works and how sorcery works, and it being explained fully in depth. We kind of knew like the basis of it, and we got introduced spirit energy a little later. Then we got introduced to sorcery being kind of the vehicle that it's drove through, and I love that explanation. It kind of reminds me of Jujutsu Kaisen's for the most part, how the sorcery technically is predetermined, but everybody has that innate ability to become a sorcerer. I think that's super interesting, and like I was saying previously, it definitely was anticipated, but it's nice to get that clarification. Also, there are a few things that I would like to clear up with Hakuri. I might not have done the best job. Hakuri has his own storehouse. He doesn't have a storehouse that is directly tied to Kura Sazanami's, and it I'm assuming will grow with his ability as he grows as a sorcerer and obtains more control over spirit energy and does more body training for his affinity to spiritual energy. Yes, he is a genius in his own right, but that doesn't mean he is short of hard work. When you look into shonen, you also always have a genius trope. I think that it is a fine use of a genius trope from Hokuzono. I just hope it doesn't become more often than not, if that makes sense. Yes, Hakuri is very special in his own way, but I don't want just having the simple explanation of a genius be enough competitively, or excuse me, repetitively throughout the story. It's nice that Hakuri is a genius. He has an affinity to spiritual energy. He ends up having two, types of sorcery through the Sazanami's bloodline. It's amazing. It's insane. But through this information and these last recent chapters, we're going to see later on in the story a lot more cultivation of the Seki and a lot more cultivation of spiritual energy and it, physically manifesting and a lot of power ups. But I hope that those are explained thoroughly and it's not always just boiled down to a higher level of genius. Also, I hope nobody's really confused about seeing Cure on the stage and him fighting Chihiro in the storehouse. Excuse me, my thoughts are a little jumbled right now because it is a video projection. That is what is being presented to the stage right now. So it's not Cura in two places at once, if that was confusing for anybody. I also love how he was able to call out May for like one last ounce of strength, but as property of the Rokuhira, he calls on May to pull it together one more time. I think that's beautiful writing. Not even from just the standpoint of him having one last attack, even though we've all been told that the Cloud Gouger's done, but as the bloodline carrying on the legacy that his father left. I've been thoroughly impressed with every chapter of Kagurabachi so far. We're almost at 40, and I don't think there's a single chapter that was lacking. Now, if this continues for the entire longevity that Kagurabachi has, it's time we have a discussion. I appreciate everybody who took their time out to watch. Like I said, we are on the road to 300 subscribers. I am hoping to hit that soon. If you guys enjoy this type of content, please hit that subscribe button. Peace out.